Here is the Canon RF 24-70 2.8. It's on a Canon R5. In this video, I'm going to compare the 24-70 RF lens to the second edition of the 24-70 EF lens. EF versus RF. I'm going to do some video tests to compare. I don't really have that many conclusions that other people who've reviewed this and compared this don't have. When it comes to stills quality, I can't tell the difference between these two with stills quality. Focus, I can tell a little bit of a difference. The focus seems to be better on the RF lens than it does the EF lens, as it should. The optics, slightly better. Everything's just slightly better on the RF in stills. And I can't, if you already have the 24-70, there's really no need to upgrade to this unless you just want the convenience of the RF lens mount and everything else that you use is RF. But with the EF, it has an advantage right now just off the bat that the RF and any of the RF series lenses don't have, and that's compatibility with other lens mounts. That's just the nature of the EF, how good the EF, how versatile the EF lens mount is in Canon. So for example, with this EF 24-70, I can use it for different cameras, such as here, this is my Panasonic GH5, and this is the Metabone Speed Booster, EF to MFT, and I could use the EF 24-70 on here and I'm not going to get 24 field of view. This is just a 0.64 times, but I can use the capabilities in an f2.8. Another brand I could use this with is Sony. I don't have a lot of Sony cameras. I only have, as far as interchangeable goes, I have the A6600, and with the A6600, here's the Sigma EF to E adapter, and I could use my Canon 24-70 EF on this camera as well. So for one lens with an EF mount, I could use it on 3 different systems that I have: Panasonic, Sony, and of course Canon. With the Canon, you need to get an RF to EF adapter, which is this one right here. This is the lowest base model. And you can also get the EF to RF adapters with additional filters on it. And that's what I got here. This has the very ND filter wheel on it, which I think is really cool. A really cool, fun device here that is not really, I mean, it's expensive. It's like $400 around there. But when you compare that to if you're going to shoot video and you're going to get very ND filters, screw-in filters, they tend to add up. The good ones do. And with this one, it's on the back end, so you have that advantage if you're shooting video mostly, or you're doing some kind of stills where you want still life and you want motion blur. But those are the benefits of the EF, I think. The only benefits of the EF mount right now, currently, is how adaptable and versatile this lens mount is to across the board with other camera systems. These RF lens, you're only stuck basically with about 4 or 5 Canon cameras natively. There's not a lot of native RF yet. But with adapters, it works just as fast. I haven't noticed a speed difference. And with the other adapters, with the Panasonic and the Sony, it's fast in stills, but with video, there are some limitations. If you want to use the Sony Sigma mount with this in video, you do not get autofocus, continuous autofocus. You get single autofocus modes, and then the rest you have to do manual. With the Panasonic, it's very similar. You get not great continuous autofocus. You get a little bit, but it's not nearly as good as when you're using the EF lens with an RF adapter on here. the autofocus in video mode and stills are great. When it comes to size comparisons, the 24 to 70 RF is bigger. It's got the same diameter for lens. If you want to screw in filters, they're both 82, which is on the bigger side for Canon. Not the biggest, but it's on the bigger side. A lot of their the L series glass is a 77, but these are 82. So any filters that you had for the EF mount will work on the RF, which is good. But yeah, it's noticeably heavier and bigger, the RF is, to the EF. However, if you're going to use the EF with any RF cameras, you have to put on the screw-on adapters. And then let me put that on right now. You have to use the EF to RF adapter. And then once you add this adapter, it's not such a difference in length. It's still, I think the RF still, yeah, the RF is still heavier, but if you're worried about length with the adapter, still kind of long. And then when you stretch out the zoom range here, let me go to 70. It's going to 70 and that's going to 70. Yeah, if I compare it neck to neck, the EF with the adapter is actually longer than the RF. Now I'm going to test these lenses back to back on the Canon R5. I'll do some indoor and outdoor, and you can see the difference. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't notice a difference, but just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to compare them. Here's the first clip. This is on the R5. I'm using the 24 to 70 RF lens. Here, this is at 24 millimeters. I'm at f4, shooting at 24p, so it's 1/50th shutter, ISO 100. I'm using a Lightform and picture profile with the daylight preset white balance. It's also on autofocus. The autofocus is pointed at my dog's head. Let me zoom in to 70. Alright, turn to 70. Move there. Put it down a little bit. So this is good locked off. Looks pretty sharp. At f4, I think this looks great. Now where this differs from the other EF lens is the IS, the image stabilizer. So if I went handheld, this would be a lot better in combination with the IBIS. So with the IBIS plus the lens stabilization, getting lots of stabilization. So I'm going to test that now. I'm going to go handheld, get this off of here. So now I'm going handheld, but I have the image stabilization, the IBIS, and the lens stabilization on at the same time. Look how steady that is. I am handheld. I'm at 70 millimeters. I think this is great autofocus and great stabilization. This is the 24 to 70 EF lens. I'm shooting 24p, I'm at f4, ISO 100, 1/50th shutter speed. I'm at a picture profile of a Lightform N. It's the daylight preset, white balance. And I have it on autofocus. I also have the in-body image stabilization on, but right now the camera is on a tripod pointing at my dog. It's on autofocus as well. I hear the autofocus moving, whereas I didn't hear the autofocus on the RF lens. So if you want a completely silent autofocus or a near silent, you can I would go with the RF. The EF, you can hear some autofocus noise. Let me go to 70 millimeters. Here's 24, 70. I have the focus pointed right at my dog's head. Now I'm going to go handheld, and let's see if you notice a difference between the RF lens with the IBIS plus the lens stabilization and the EF lens with just the IBIS. So I'm going to go off of my tripod now. And this has the IBIS on, but there's no image, there's no lens stabilization. I'm at 70 millimeters. I'm trying to hold the camera exactly like I held the camera with the RF lens. This might not be the best test because I'm pretty stable. I'm pretty stabilized, so you might not even notice a difference between the image stabilization of the RF and the EF lenses. How's that autofocus? Autofocus good? I think the autofocus looks good. Again, I can hear the focus motors. I don't know if you can hear the focus motors. I don't have an external mic. These are just the onboard camera mics on auto. So that was the test between the RF and the EF. To summarize my comparison here, so if you don't have a budget for $2,200, $2,300, then you could find the 24-70 version 2, I think for a lot less, especially if you get it used. There's a lot of these used on the used market that you could get a pretty good deal for. Also, if you have different camera systems, such as like I do, Panasonic and Sony, and you want to use one lens with adapters across the different manufacturers, then the EF is where you want to go. So price and versatility with other camera brands, EF. If you can afford it and you want the best quality of the absolute best in a 24-70 and you're upgraded all to the RF system, then that's when I would get the RF version. You get IS built in, image stabilization, which you don't necessarily need because the R5 has IBIS, but when you put it on the R5, it combines the lens stabilization with the in-body stabilization and you get the best image stabilization. The autofocus is also much quieter in video mode than it is on the EF, if that's a concern for you. Otherwise, if you use lav mics or if you just have a shotgun microphone, that's not an issue at all. Takes the same lens mounts again. It's very similar. Once you combine with adapters, the RF to EF adapter, it's about the same length, but the RF lens does weigh a lot more. I could afford the 24-70 RF lens, so that's why I've upgraded for it. I haven't talked much about this extra ring here, where you could program a bunch of other different camera settings. I don't use that, but that's another advantage, another feature upgrade from the EF to the RF if you use it for ISO or for your iris or whatever. And so that's my comparison video.